let's talk about disinformation and let's talk about censorship. And we've got a whole lot to get to on the censorship front today. There's a lot of different countries that are screwing with you, and they're trying to make sure that you don't have a voice on the internet. So while you were out there worried about paying more for gasoline and putting food on your table, the White House continues to press forward with increased censorship against speech it doesn't like, while at the same time spending your taxpayer dollars on speech that it does like. So yeah, it's if you needed me to unpack that a little bit, it's taking your tax dollars and it's actually funneling it out to institutions and governments that it likes their speech and providers of speech in other countries and in the United States. Might even be exact opposite of what your speech is. They're using your tax dollars to do that. We'll get there in a second. More on that in a second. But first, the White House is trying to push big tech companies to censor voices that it doesn't like by labeling it as disinformation. So there was a big Axios event yesterday. And I love when these news organizations pretend to be fair and independent. And then, Axios particularly is like brought to you by Raytheon, sponsored by Chevron. So Axios held an event yesterday with the White House in a conversation on battling misinformation. This is an Axios panel on battling misinformation. And White House National Climate Advisor, Gina McCarthy, decided to jump online, and she was there to talk about how she plans to jump in and fight misinformation and disinformation. Listen to the climate czar under President Biden.
We have to get tighter. We have to get better at communicating. And frankly, the tech companies have to stop allowing specific individuals over and over again to spread disinformation. That's what the fossil fuel companies pay for. That's what folks who make money out of fossil fuels and don't make money and don't care about saving consumers' costs. That's what they do. We have to be smarter than that, and we need the tech companies to really jump in.
All right, so I'm going to keep the screen up for. Oh, sorry. Can you go back to that screen? The reason I wanted to bring the screen back up here is because, first of all, do you see how we're talking about we need to have big tech companies stepping in and get them have tighter, she says. We also need to have the fossil fuel companies reined in so they can't spread misinformation. So we need to basically tell these companies to stop spreading misinformation. We need to censor them, is what the Biden administration wants to do. But notice at the bottom of the screen is presented by 3M. So this Axios in the infodemic age is brought to you by 3M. And then Axios, of course, if you go to their website on any kind of regular basis, you'll see that a lot of their stories, this story is brought to you by, this tech company or this weapons manufacturer. So this is who you're getting your information from. And I love like the bobblehead there from Axios who's just like shaking her head. Yeah, totally agree with you. Totally agree with you. Thank you for joining us. I totally agree. Everything you're saying, I'm just going to shake my head because that's what we do in the mainstream media.
Well, and this kind of, everybody argues, yeah, but these social media companies, they're private companies. You don't have free speech on these companies. And people are absolutely right. They don't. It should be kind of like a guide that they go by. But as soon as the government starts actively telling them what is and isn't disinformation, then that is a violation of our First Amendment.
Right. And they're going to decide. So you're right. I mean, they're going to tell us what's right, what's accurate. Now, Axios said the purpose of the event was to examine the real world impacts of misinformation on public health and climate. So that's what she was there to make sure that we understand what is the real world accounting of that. Of course, this isn't the first or the last time. Jen Psaki, you'll recall, here's an article from 2021. Biden's press secretary admits federal government is flagging content for Facebook to censor. So don't forget that just last year, the White House admitted in a stunning moment that they were actively coordinating with Facebook on the phone regularly to flag posts of United States citizens for being problematic and containing different misinformation about COVID. We only learned this because a reporter asked this question. Listen to this question of Jen Psaki at the press conference.
We believe that all of us, social media companies, platforms, where a lot of this misinformation travels, the media, state and local officials, it's important for everybody to step up. And certainly the pushback against disinformation, information that is, literally a matter of life and death, is something that is going to be a continued focus of this administration. You are right that obviously decisions to regulate or hold to account any platform would certainly be a policy decision, but in the interim, we're going to continue to call out disinformation and call out where that information travels.
Does the president have plans to speak with Mark Zuckerberg at all about this?
There's no plans that I'm aware of. Go ahead.
Nice try, Caitlin, to get that answer. She's the one that asked the question, so that's the only reason we know about it. Caitlin, by the way, is a great reporter. So what is this coordination? Like, we're coordinating with them. Well, apart from getting them to remove posts and accounts of people they don't like, they're also asking Facebook to serve up positive news to those people. Here, take our propaganda, basically. Here's our propaganda. We want you to serve up our propaganda to people on Facebook. So we want you to silence their voices. If they post things we don't like, take it down. We're on the phone with Facebook regularly asking them to do that. And so then Jen Psaki was asked to clarify this. Like, well, wait a second. You're actually coordinating with Facebook and social media companies to censor Americans? Can you be more specific, please? And by the way, this has not stopped. This is happening right now. So just because Jen Psaki is behind the podium,
it's only gotten worse, actually.
Yeah, you're right about that. It's gotten worse. Just because Jen Psaki is no longer behind the podium, don't think for a second that this has stopped. It's gotten worse, to David's point. So here's Jen Psaki laying out exactly how they coordinate with Facebook.
It's important to take faster action against harmful posts. As you all know, information travels quite quickly on social media platforms. Sometimes it's not accurate, and Facebook needs to move more quickly to remove harmful, violative posts. Posts that will be within their policies for removal often remain up for days. That's too long. The information spreads too quickly. Finally.
Oh, you mean, just to be clear, just like your fake Twitter posts that were up for days when people reported it as fake news. Even Jake Tapper asked Dr. Fauci about these fake news stories about that were coming out of the White House that were up on Twitter. Like, why was it up there and not removed for days? It's been up there for days. Why isn't somebody doing about this disinformation?
We have proposed they promote quality information sources in their feed algorithm. Facebook has repeatedly shown that they have the leverage to promote quality information. We've seen them effectively do this.
Well, and let me say this about quality information. Whenever you sign up for any of these apps, you sign up for YouTube, you sign up for Facebook, any of them. So what Facebook and all of them do is then they sit there and they say, okay, we recommend CNN, Fox News, all this. These are the news agencies that they are calling good information, when we have proven over and over and over again that the majority of the stories are hyperbole and have no base in fact. And those are the ones that they're saying are the good information.
Right. Yeah. Who are the good information ones? The people in this White House press briefing room, right? The people we invite to be here, right? And so those are the state funded, basically government funded news organizations. Like, you know, that's who we want you to share information with. Don't you love it when you start open your Google News app or you open like Apple News app, or you open one of these apps for the first time and it gives you suggested news sources, and like CNN is always right there, you know, as a suggested news source.
I've never once seen a good third party ever.
No.
Like, you don't see redacted news being promoted in there. And
I would love it.
You look at some of the news programs on TV and we're getting more viewers than them.
Yeah, we have more people watching our show right now than people are watching CNN, you know, on a regular basis. So, yeah. So you open up these news apps, you get like CNN, you get Reuters as a choice. But I just love this idea that Jen Psaki says there, that we're telling Facebook to push out positive news sources that get our message out. Take this propaganda and force it down people's throat. I want to go back to that and play this chunk again. So listen to this part.
They have proposed they promote quality information sources in their feed algorithm. Facebook has repeatedly shown that they have the leverage to promote quality information. We've seen them effectively do this in their algorithm over low quality information, and they've chosen not to use it in this case. And that's certainly an area that would have an impact.
Oh, okay. So we're really working with Facebook to make sure that they do that, to censor these posts and to make sure we push out positive information. Stuff that our White House signs off on. That's the quality information you're going to get from your Facebook feed. The U.S. Surgeon General, who then about a day later showed up at the podium at the White House to speak on this, sent out this tweet that says, this is Dr. Vivek Murthy, the U.S. Surgeon General. We all have the power and responsibility to confront health misinformation. That's why we included recommendations for individuals, educators, researchers, health professionals, tech companies, and more. Learn how you can act at surgeongeneral.gov, how you can combat misinformation. So you recall, then, of course, it's led to our Disinformation Governance Board with Nina Jankowicz as the head of it, and now it's Michael Chertoff as the head of it. Well, Rand Paul, of course, was about a week and a half ago or so, or 2 weeks ago now, said this about America being the purveyor of disinformation. Listen.
I think you've got no idea what disinformation is, and I don't think the government's capable of it. Do you know who the greatest propagator of disinformation in the history of the world is? The U.S. government. Are you familiar with McNamara, the Pentagon Papers? Are you familiar with George W. Bush and the weapons of mass destruction? Are you familiar with Iran-Contra? I mean, think of all the debates and disputes we've had over the last 50 years in our country. We work them out by debating them. We don't work them out by the government being the arbiter. I don't want you guardrails. I want you to have nothing to do with speech. You think we can't determine, speech by traffickers is disinformation? You think the American people are so stupid they need you to tell them what the truth is? You can't even admit what the truth is with the Steele dossier. I don't trust government to figure out what the truth is. Government is largely disseminating disinformation.
Such a great moment. It might be like the best 1 minute I've seen in years, like what he just said there.
Yeah, that's like, what was that? The newsroom? Like that just overtook the newsroom with Jeff Daniels, that whole speech.
And you know what's difficult is actually even to find that clip. Like, we have that clip saved in our archive because you cannot find it. Like the internet, like YouTube has like pulled it down. It's very difficult to find. If you find it, it's like some mashed up version of it. It's very difficult to find that.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, it's been hard to even find that clip. Maybe it's easier to find now. You can get it on C-SPAN or something, but we couldn't find it on C-SPAN. We couldn't find it's amazing, like, to try to find that stuff. Anyway, not only is the United States government pushing an information agenda in the United States by censoring voices they don't like, now they're doing this very same thing to Russian citizens. I want you to take a look at this story. Just give me a second here to pull this up. So this story moved across the wires today. U.S. increases funding to help Russians access U.S. state-funded media. It was in a Reuters report, and Dave DeCamp took it down here and wrote about it. But it says the U.S. is funding firms that build virtual private networks. So I want you to wrap your head around this for a second. Since Russia invaded Ukraine, the U.S. has, as David says, increased funding of technology companies to help Russian citizens get around internet censorship and access United States-based media, according to Reuters. The effort is focused on financing 3 companies in particular. So your tax dollars, the United States government gave to 3 tech companies to help Russians get information from American media sources. Do you follow the money trail? Your money went to the U.S. government. The U.S. government then took it, gave it to tech companies that could help Russians watch our version of CNN. Like, this is what they're spending your taxpayer dollars on. Companies.
They're trying to overtake. They're trying to push our propaganda in Russia so that the Russian people think that Russia is attacking Ukraine and follow our narrative of what's going on in Ukraine rather than Putin's.
Exactly. Yeah, and to give our... so they understand our take on China. They have our take on everything, on democracy, on all of this stuff. Since February, the funding for 3 virtual private network companies has increased by nearly half. The financing is done through the Open Technology Fund, which is a nonprofit funded entirely by the U.S. government that Washington uses to support protesters in other countries by giving them tools to avoid surveillance and get around internet censorship. The OTF is overseen by the U.S. Agency for Global Media, which runs U.S. state-funded media. including the Voice of America or Radio Free Europe. In March, Russia restricted access to Voice of America's website for publishing what it called unreliable information about the war in Ukraine. Now, of course, the United States also took down RT, which is Russia Today. They also blocked the other one, Sputnik News, right?
Sputnik, yeah.
So Russia Today America, RT America, which, as we've talked about on this show repeatedly, there are independent journalists who work for those stations who travel the world and cover stories and who are given carte blanche to cover the stories that they want in their own voice without any pressure from their bosses, in a way that American newsrooms are not, which is remarkable, right? To think about that. And so we have amazing people who've lost their jobs at RT because of this American clampdown on free speech and
well, and I don't know if you remember Abby Martin.
Who?
Abby Martin was a journalist on RT, and she was very critical of Russia, and they never said a word to her. She had her show for years, and then all of that content that was actually against Russia and all that stuff, her whole archive was taken down by YouTube, by the United States, not Russia.
Exactly. So the effort is focused on financing 3 companies that build virtual private networks to circumvent geographic internet restrictions. Between 2015 and 2021, the 3 firms include Nethlink, Scion, and Lantern, received millions of dollars in U.S. funding from the U.S. government. But through the VPNs funded by the U.S. government, Russians are still able to access Voice of America and other U.S. state-funded media outlets. So we're doing our job, getting them American information. The Reuters report said that VPN usage in Russia has significantly increased since the war started, and Russia added internet restrictions. The report said that posters advertising these and other government-backed VPNs started appearing in Moscow once the war started. One poster contained a QR code that opened the link to the VPN, which would take users to a series of news headlines from the U.S. state-funded media. The very same people that Rand Paul just talked about are the biggest purveyors of disinformation in the world. So,
brought to you by Pfizer.
Exactly. So if you ever wondered, yeah, you sit on a throne of lies. Exactly. The CIA published instructions in Russian on its social media accounts on how to access its site on the dark web to contact the agency. The idea is for the CIA to get in touch with Russians against the war in Ukraine. This is how your tax dollars hard at work funding information campaigns inside of Russia.
And how much do you want to bet that is no part of the $59 billion? Like, that's an additional, like, when we talk about the money that's going over to these campaigns and they come out with a bill that's like, yes, it's $40 billion that's going over there. They're not telling you about the other billions and millions and things that sneak over there in all these other different ways.
Oh, no, of course. This is all, that's my question. So we just earlier in the show, we talked about President Biden getting on the phone and calling Zelensky and telling him we're going to send you another $1 billion. Well, then why the hell did you have a vote on the $40 billion? Like, why even bother? Why not? You can just do it at carte blanche. You can just literally reach into the kitty and you can increase your own defense budget. You can just sign additional bills and send it over. Why do you need to go to Congress for that crap?
Yeah. Do you see that video of Zelensky at Western Union? He couldn't get the number right. So he was like calling Biden back, like, what's the 3-digit number you gave me? He's like, I don't remember. He's like, he couldn't get the $1 billion because Western Union was holding up because of that code.
But like, what's my CVV code? It's on the back of your credit card. It's on the American credit card we gave you, which is an endless supply of money that you can use for anything you want.
The Amex Black Card.
Oh, my God. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel. We've been banned, we've been blocked, we've been censored. That's why we started our own website, to stay connected with you for free.
That's right. So head on over to redacted.inc and make sure you're connected with us. You can sign up again at redacted.inc, not .com.